and then available for anyone who has questions in the future. The format for this evening is to have both Chief Bouchard and Assistant Chief McAllister make a presentation. At the conclusion of that presentation, we will take questions. And depending on how the questions go, I think we'll answer them one at a time and move forward. I expect that hopefully by 8:30 p.m. We will have answered all the questions. If not, we will figure out the next steps. Some of the information you may hear is not perhaps what you would like to hear, but I want to get out. What I find is that providing as much information as possible on the same format provides everyone with the same set of facts, and we can move forward from there. I think there is some exciting news that the chiefs will be sharing about Station 4. I know that you have received emails from me relative to where we have been with Station 4 and what the future looks like for Station 4. I also hope to have questions answered relative to financing. I will state from the outset, when I first was elected and took office in 2011, was the unfortunate year where we had to close a number of stations. What you pay in taxes has nothing to do with the type of service you receive. I think if you think about it, you don't want one community that may pay more in taxes to have better service than a community that, due to assessed valuation, has less access to services. Basically, fire services are an insurance policy. What I have said throughout my entire tenure as a county supervisor is you never want to have a fire engine show up at your house. You want to know that you will have a fire engine show up at your house. And of course, we are fortunate in Contra Costa County, and especially with Consolidated Fire. And I want to make it very clear that Con Fire is a special, what we call dependent district. The Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors sits as the board of directors for Con Fire, but they have a separate revenue source, and the financial decisions relative to Con Fire are made independently of the county taxation, if you will. So with that, Chief Bouchard, would you, I'm going to let you kick it off.
Okay, well, thank you, Supervisor Mitchoff, and I appreciate you scheduling the time for us to discuss Station 4 with everybody that's on the call tonight. And for all of you that are on the call, I appreciate your time taking it away from whether it be dinner or time with friends or family. So we'll try and be as efficient as possible with our time tonight. I wanted to just let you know I'm not going to do a PowerPoint presentation or anything like that. So we're just going to walk through what our current plans are for Station 4 and address some of the specific questions that we've received via the supervisor's office as best we can. So as you all know, Station 4 was closed along with several stations and what we call engine companies within the fire district as a result of the Great Recession. And it's been a long road of rebuilding and recovering from that particular time period. It's a fairly complex financial road to hoe. Many things changed during that period of time with regards to cost structures and CESARA, our retirement association, and so forth. So we've done the best we can to navigate those waters and rebuild the organization into what we feel is a sustainable, efficient, well-rounded organization. And that hasn't meant that we simply put the pieces back together exactly as they were on the board back in 2010, 2011. Chief McAllister will give us a little bit of information on the facility itself in just a moment. But I wanted to give you some timelines with respect to our plan for Station 4. We are currently planning to open Station 4 in July of 22. So that's a little less than 18 months from now. And the reason why that date is important is because that is the date that corresponds with a very significant financial milestone for the fire district. The fire district has a very significant debt service requirement that goes away effective July of 2022, which is essentially the beginning of that fiscal year. So beginning in July of 22, we will have somewhere between 11 and $13 million of expenses that will no longer be needed to service what are called pension obligation bonds. That money, I guess the best analogy is like paying off your mortgage. So once that's done, that money can be redirected towards getting more resources out into the community. A couple of years ago, when we opened Station 16, it was very clear to us that, actually I shouldn't say a couple of years ago, I guess it was 2019, that Station 16 was going to be the last station that we would be able to reopen until we reached that July of 22 timeframe. So that's the timeframe that we're looking at with regards to reopening Station 4. There are a lot of logistical issues that have to be dealt with between now and then. Everything from ordering apparatus to refurbishing the station to, most importantly, getting a certain number of personnel hired so that we can actually staff the station. So we are planning on ordering approximately 4 new fire engines in May. They take 12 to 15 months to get here. So part of the reason why we're looking at May is so that we can hopefully achieve a July timeframe in 2022. As far as recruiting firefighters, we have 2 fire academies planned. One is October of 21, so next October, and a second follow-up academy in March of 22. Those are our normal fire academy timeframes. We don't run fire academies through the summer. It's just far too busy for us to be able to do that. So we have existing staffing needs that the October Academy will help us address, and the March Academy will get us personnel available in July of 22. Ironically, that is a very lengthy process to get people hired into this organization, and that recruitment process actually starts this month in February in order to have applications submitted, start interviews in April, and work through the summer through the background and onboarding processes so people can start in October and then get a second group ready for March. So the apparatus and the people, we have a plan for that, and it will coincide with our ability to afford to pay for the staffing on an ongoing basis starting in July of 22. If Chief McAllister, you left my screen, but if you could walk us through where we are with our current assessment of the structure of the facility, is obviously that's going to be important in this process of reopening.
Sure, Chief, thanks. So Fire Station 4 is one of the oldest facilities in the district, not quite the oldest facility, but it was built in 1956. It's been closed for several years, and it does need some heavy paint and carpet and some projects before we're able to reoccupy that facility. So our estimates are in the 250 to 350 range on in terms of 250,000 to 350,000, what it's going to take to rehabilitate that facility, make it occupiable for our staff. It needs bathroom remodel, kitchen remodel, Needs to have the roof replaced. The roof is in very poor condition, and the apparatus bay is one of the smallest apparatus bays in the district, and only certain units can fit there. In addition, that facility does not have a diesel storage tank for refilling apparatus, and it does not have an emergency generator. So that's about another $500,000 if we do choose to go ahead and invest that money to make that fully capable like our other stations. We are building some other new stations in the district. The cost of a replacement station is $10 to $15 million for a new firehouse. So we do intend to remodel Station 4 to bring it up to a little bit more modern standard in order to make it occupiable in the time frame that the chief discussed.
Chief, can you talk about the bomb squad there and what the current that you've notified them relative to the issue of reoccupying that site?
Certainly. So as you're probably aware, the Walnut Creek Police Department is our current tenant in that building. They approached us shortly after it was closed. They needed a facility to support the regional bomb squad that they operate. And that helped us because they pay for some of the maintenance and upkeep, but most importantly, a structure that is occupied is better maintained than a structure that is completely vacant. So it's worked out well. Chief McAllister and I did meet with the interim police chief as well as the city manager about 2 weeks ago. And we had conversations about the future of Station 4 in the past, and we meet every quarter. But we did inform them that we'd be moving forward with restaffing the station and that we'd be working on a timeline of getting the station refurbished, which would impact their occupancy of the station. And they completely accepted that and are working on an alternative for the bomb squad. And they indicated that they had plenty of time and that they had another option. So we don't anticipate that to create any delays for us. And we'll be able to do some of the work while they're in there, but at some point, particularly when we get into the interior remodel, we'll have to have them vacated from the site in order to get that done. So, so you will see the Walnut Creek Police Department continuing to maintain a presence there for a while. So wanted to cover a couple of things briefly with you. Some questions about ambulance response times and so forth have been asked of us, and Station 4 is very normal response times when it comes to ambulances. Back in 2016, the fire district was awarded the contract to take over 911 emergency ambulance services for the majority of the county. The ambulances that we operate are not housed out of fire stations, so you're likely to see them parked in a parking lot or often driving on the freeway or in the city. And in many cases, they're driving to or parked at what we call posts. Consider a post to be a strategic location that's determined through the use of software that helps us put ambulances in the most appropriate locations to answer that next call. So they're pretty much constantly on the move. We call it dynamic deployment, and it served us very well ever since we took over the contract. So Station 4 area right now has an average response time of 7 minutes and 46 seconds for an ambulance for a typical emergency call. Roughly 7 minutes of that is travel time. By contract, our ambulances need to be, their wheels need to be moving no more than 60 seconds after that ambulance receives the call. So it stands to reason that that 45 seconds is essentially what we consider to be their get out time, and then the rest of it is all travel time. So those numbers are not going to be impacted by Station 4 opening or not opening. It's a fairly independent system, and it's not factored on that station being open. One of the things that we that we think that we'll be able to achieve with Station 4 opening is a significant change in the fire engine response times. And I don't mean to, state the overly obvious, but the closer a fire station is to an emergency, the shorter amount of time it takes us to get there normally. So right now, Engine 1 has about a 7-minute travel time to get into Station 4. It's 7 minutes and 6 seconds on average. So we think that we'll probably achieve a 3 to 4 minute improvement on travel times with Engine 4 being staffed at Station 4 versus having to rely on Engine 1 to come from downtown Walnut Creek. So that's a significant improvement in response times. And when we look at Station 16 in Lafayette, Station 17 in Lafayette, and Station 4, there are some common themes, and one of the most common themes is the roadway network. The roadway network is windy, lots of stop signs. It's not a fast roadway network, and so having the station staffed, one of the primary reasons to staff it is the fact that one of the limitations is the roadway network. It's not necessarily the distances; it's the speeds which we're able to achieve on some of these older roadway networks. So that will be a significant advantage to not just Station 4's area, but Engine 4 will also help out the responses on the freeway, responses into Rossmore, responses into Southern Walnut Creek. And the fire district is a very large system, and having more resources in the system, regardless of the location, helps the system. In this case, having Station 4, there will be the obvious and hopefully immediate impact and improvement in response times for the local community around Station 4, but there will be some other impacts for us as a fire district as a whole by being able to service Southern Walnut Creek and Rossmore with Station 4 being staffed. So we're excited to be able to start to move towards that direction. Like I said, there's a lot of logistical issues that we have to work through, but we think we have sufficient time to be able to do that, and believe that we have the support from the board and the CAO to be able to move this forward and get one of our other stations that's been closed for a while back in service as we reach that financial milestone that I mentioned earlier. So that's really the short version of the story. We've had a number of questions that came through Supervisor Mitchoff's office, and so Supervisor Mitchoff, if it's all right with you, I'll just start to address some of those questions.
Please do.
Okay, so Chief McAllister covered the status of the survey and the things that we need to do to Station 4 to make it habitable. There's a question that we were asked about the current status of our staffing in the district and how many additional members would need to be hired to provide for the staffing of the station. If you don't know, and I know some of the people on the call are very familiar with this, but Station 4 has one engine. Station 4 has 3 people assigned to that station: a captain, an engineer, the engineer is the driver, and a firefighter or a firefighter paramedic. And there's 3 shifts. So that's 9 personnel that we need to hire within the system to support reopening Station 4. Now, all those new people are obviously not going to Station 4. They will go to other places, other stations within the fire district, and other seasoned members of the organization will end up staffing Station 4. So it's not as if 9 brand new recruits graduate the academy and they all go to Station 4. That's certainly not how it works. So we don't have those folks. We have to work through the academy, the recruitment and the academy process to get them on board. And we anticipate that they'll be on board June or July of 22. which corresponds to the opening of the station. Does the fire district have adequate current funding to provide for the additional expenses required to staff the station? The short answer is no. Under the current budget and our current revenue and expenses, no, we don't. And that's why July of 22 is so important, because come July of 22, when that final payment is made on that debt service, that beginning of that fiscal year, the budget will reflect that those expenses will be redirected towards the new personnel. So that's why July of 22 is so important for Station 4's reopening. We received a couple of questions about population density within Station 4's district, as well as what is the total assessed valuation of the properties within Station 4's area. So real quick on population density, we don't have that data. With regards to assessed valuation, we get some limited information from the assessor's office regarding assessed valuation. Every year when we are told what to expect with regards to increases in our assessed valuation, those estimates come with a report. And that report essentially outlines individual cities as far as what the assessed valuation is within a city and what the change is, either up, down, or I suppose, no change. We don't get reports with regards to assessed valuation within individual, I guess, response zones, meaning stations. That's not something that we have access to. We have asked for reports similar to that, and have been told that it's not something that is available. In addition, we don't make operational decisions. Well, actually, we really don't make any decisions based on assessed valuation of cities or response zones. We just don't do that. The fire district, as a district, services 9 cities and many unincorporated communities. In fact, Station 4 is a combination. There's unincorporated areas as well as the city of Walnut Creek that are served in its primary response area. What we do with assessed valuation, however, is in areas of new development where essentially it's bare dirt, such as the former Naval Weapons Station in Concord or areas of southern Antioch that are proposed to be developed. It's fairly easy for us to look at these large open parcels, determine what our share of the ad valorem or the 1% tax would be, and get an idea of what the assessed valuation of the development is likely to be, and then determine whether or not that development is going to be a cost-neutral development or not. And if it's not going to be a cost-neutral development, we work with the city and the developer on impact fees and facilities districts to provide an ongoing revenue stream to help support what will be ongoing operations and needs. And in some cases, that requires a new station and new personnel. But when it comes to existing areas, we just simply don't analyze based on the value of the properties. We look at what the risk is, and we look at what resources we have available and how much money we have available to pay for those resources. And we do the best that we can to allocate the resources and distribute the resources as appropriate as possible to mitigate that risk. A couple questions about the pension system, and specifically, what does the Contra Costa pension, that's the Contra Costa County Employees Retirement Association, CESARA, the recent decision that they made regarding East Contra Costa Fire, where they depooled East Contra Costa Fire from the fire district, what does that have to do with the budget? this is the Sisera is a very complex issue. In a nutshell, when Sisera made the decision last fall to depool, meaning take the East Contra Costa Fire employees out of the group with us, that ended up increasing our overall costs to support the pension for our employees. And that net cost we estimate to be somewhere between $1.5 and $2 million annually. And that cost starts in less than 6 months on July 1st of this year. So that was a bit of an unanticipated expense for our budget. And it's not a one-time expense, it's an ongoing expense. And essentially it's an ongoing expense in the form of a rate increase from Sisera to the fire district as a result of that action. So that's probably the best way that I can put it. And Sisera is a big factor with regards to our cost of operations, as you can imagine. There's some questions about consolidation and what impacts that would have, and perhaps what does that mean with regards to Con Fire's revenue, and if we're going to have to spend money in these areas. The current analysis and study that's being done on the possibility of annexing the East Contra Costa Fire Protection District or the Rodeo Hercules Fire Protection District is focusing on several issues. One of them is the fiscal feasibility and sustainability of such an annexation. We anticipate, based on an early study last fall, that the results will suggest that the annexation would be what we consider to be cost neutral to the district, meaning that Con Fire would not necessarily have to provide money to operate stations within East Contra Costa Fire or Rodeo Hercules. And really what this means is that by putting agencies together, there are some efficiencies, some economies of scale, some savings, and hopefully the net effect of all of that will be that those dollars can be turned around and invested in those communities, particularly in East Contra Costa Fire, to get more resources. We're all trying very hard to get more resources to the eastern portion of the fire district, our fire district, as well as East Contra Costa's fire district, in order to put less pressure on the resources that we have in Concord, Walnut Creek, Lafayette, because the more incidents that occur in East County, the system has to support that. Think of everybody having to sort of respond out towards the east. So the more resources we can get out east, the better it's going to be for everybody, even all the way out in your neighborhood. So I think Chief McAllister is going to address a couple of questions related specifically to wildland fire response, wildland fire threat. So, Chief.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, certainly your neighborhood is in the wildland urban interface area. You've got a large open space adjacent to the community, and that does present a risk. Those risks are present throughout our county in multiple other areas. And we've taken a lot of steps in recent years to increase our capability in terms of wildland firefighting. I'll go through a few of those with you. First of all is our dozer program. Used to be kind of a casual program, and that's turned into a full 24-hour staffed resource during wildland fire season. And 2 years ago, we started the planning process to acquire a second bulldozer. So this last fire season, we were able to staff 2 bulldozers instead of 1 during red flag days, or if one was committed to a fire, we still had one other one available to us. And so that's an asset that we've located in the county that didn't used to exist on a regular basis. Also, last year we started our wildland hand crew program. CAL FIRE saw a decrease in the number of available hand crews. They could be used on state fires, they could be used on local fires, and we've used our hand crew on some wildland mitigation projects to decrease a little bit of risk and then to respond to emergencies and really handle some of the heavy lifting on the mop up of wildland fires in order to take our municipal engine companies and put them back in service faster. And so that program has worked really well for us. And we've planned on increasing the number of hand crew members next fire season that we have available. And lastly is our helicopter program. So when we get a helicopter from CAL FIRE, they come from Alma, which is almost in Santa Cruz, or Boggs Mountain, which is in Lake County. We have, through our partnership with Reach Helicopter, we now have a water dropping helicopter that is right here at Buchanan Field that is available to respond within moments to local fires, not just state responsibility area fires, but local responsibility fires as well. So we've really beefed up the wildland assets that are available to us. We do see a certain amount of risk in your neighborhood. However, it is not in a state designated high fire hazard severity zone. There's other areas of the county that do present higher risk than your neighborhood, but we certainly recognize the risk that's there in your area.
There's one question on the chat, and it's a question about, it's a great question, actually. As an abutting neighbor to Station 4, what should we expect by having the fire department as a neighbor? We tend to get this question, I wouldn't say a lot because we don't build a lot of new fire stations necessarily, but Station 16 is a good example. When we rebuilt that, it had been vacant for a long time. So, and new neighbors showed up in the meantime. I think that you'll find that the fire department is a very good neighbor and a conscientious neighbor, and a neighbor that you can come over and say hi and spend some time with, and that is there for you if you need something, emergency wise or not. And it's certainly not necessarily as noisy as you would expect. Our crews do a good job of respecting the neighborhood that they work and live in, and I think that's important, that the crews live there, and it's their house for basically a third of their life while they're working here. So I think that you'll find that they are a good neighbor, and in some cases a very useful neighbor. So that's a great question. So Supervisor Mitchoff, I don't know that I have any more questions that I'm aware of. So
Okay, and I appreciate that. Thank you both, Chief Bouchard and Assistant Chief McAllister. I know one of the questions has been, why has it taken so long to establish reopening Station 4? And if you will, one of the issues, obviously, and anyone in business understands this, we have so many resources. And yes, there was a decision made by the board of directors, the board of supervisors, to put Station 16, which is in Lafayette, back in operation before Station 4. And that had to do with a number of factors. We can go into that, but mostly they had a higher wildfire interface than did Station 4. When I met with Chief Bouchard and Chief McAllister earlier this month, I was very pleased to hear that Station 4 was on the list to reopen. I know, let me go back a little bit relative to Contra Costa County Employees Retirement Association, what we refer to as CESARA. And that is an independent body. I used to sit on that. Currently, Supervisor Anderson sits on that. If you are familiar with East County Fire, Proposition 13 created lots of benefits, but it also created a number of unintended consequences. And one of those was that at the time that Proposition 13 went in back in 1978, a lot of East County was very rural. It did not have the development that went along with what we see today. And there was a tax base set at that time. So consequently, East County residents pay the same amount of taxes based on their assessed value as anyone else in the county, but a percentage of those taxes do not go back to local government, including fire. So when East County Fire approached Cesara, one of the big issues is what we call depuoling. And they had been part of a pool that paid a higher amount of retirement funds into the fund. And they asked Cesara if they could be relieved of that responsibility and be what we call depuled. So there were a number of pros and cons to that. In the end, the Cesara board, because of the problems with East County Fire, decided to depul. And in doing so, it created the expenses that Chief Bouchard mentioned that increased the amount for Con Fire. We have no control over that. It is what it is. As you may be aware, and some of you have written to me about, which Measure X, which is the half-cent sales tax that was passed in November, will now be collected starting April 1st. And one of the points to East County voters was that they would see some of that funding come back to them to assist because they have not had the share of Prop 13 that those of us in Central County have enjoyed. And that is a strange word. None of us would think of our taxes as enjoying a better benefit than someone else, but more of that dollar, if you will, just take a dollar, more cents of that dollar goes to Con Fire than does in East County. And Measure X is a countywide sales tax measure that will be collected whether you're in an incorporated city or the unincorporated area of the county. And we will be looking to assist that. As Chief Bouchard mentioned, there is a study going on. At one time, I've been in government way too long. What's old is new, and what was, we change plans and then you come back. And there was a time, we call ourselves Consolidated Fire because, and we are the largest fire district in Contra Costa County, but there is Orinda-Moraga, there is Crockett Rodeo, Richmond has its own fire department. There's the Hercules Fire Department, East County Fire, there was part of Riverview Fire. There were a lot of these different fire districts. And at one point we consolidated a lot of them, but others decided to, if you will, go their own way. And East County Fire was one of them. At the time, it made sense. In today, 2021, it may not make sense. And so there is a study underway to evaluate what is best for everyone in both of those districts. And so when we talk about Cesara and the retirement obligations, retirement issues are a whole different thing. I used to sit on Cesara. I'm happy to have one-on-one conversations with you about that. I don't want to take a lot of time, but it is what it is. And in order to relieve East County Fire of an obligation because they had fewer firefighters in that pool, they decided to quote unquote depul it. That helped East County Fire. It wasn't as great of a deal for Con Fire. And as Chief Bouchard touched on earlier, and I'm sort of jumping issues here. No matter what you pay in taxes, and what I alluded to earlier, you don't want that to be the basis of your fire protection. I think the good news is that Station 4 will reopen around July of 2022, that we will have experienced firefighters going back in. There will be expenses associated with reopening Station 4 because the fire apparatus bay is smaller and we need to make some construction changes to that to accommodate the newer equipment. We will have to order and pay for new equipment. But the purpose of the first part of this was to provide you with sort of a background, what I call Fire 101. And we want to open it up now to questions from you in the community. We've tried to address some of the issues that have been brought to our attention. But what I will do, and Leah and Colleen are sort of going to manage this. I need you to raise your hand. I'm used to Zoom. If this is your first Zoom meeting, at the bottom, you will see a participants. You just click on that and your name probably comes up number 1 because it's your Zoom, and you hit a raise hand. On the other hand, if you can't figure all that out, just raise your hand and we will get to you. What I'm trying to do is answer as many questions as you have this evening, to either question what you've heard or if you have new issues. So I'm seeing, is it EG9? I'm sorry, sir. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but you seem to have had your hand up first. So I need you to take yourself off mute and it's your turn to ask a question.
That's
There you go.
Mike.
Great.
Good evening. Thank you for making yourself available. There's a lot of concern on this issue within the area. I have a couple of questions. You answered one of them partially with the remodeling of Station 4 to accommodate the standard or larger apparatus. Will they also make room for a Type 3 or wildland engine, or would just be a basic Type 1?
If there are any modifications necessary, it will still only be a single engine bay.
Chief Burchard, could you address the issue of our wildland response and what the district has expended in resources relative to dozers and where those are housed and why they are housed where they are housed?
Yeah, I think Chief McAllister covered some of that. We have expanded our wildland operations primarily because the heavy equipment program, the dozer, the helicopter, and the hand crew are kind of force multipliers. They bring an element in our response that augments the traditional engine companies and helps us keep the small fires small. So they come from a variety of different locations. The hand crew is out of Martinez. The dozer is typically currently during the season staffed at Station 10, the training center there in Concord, and the helicopter is
On Treat Boulevard.
correct. And the helicopter is obviously Buchanan Field, so it gets many places very quickly.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you. I have another question. East County has voted down 2 or 3 tax measures to support their district. Why should we support East County via annexation with our taxes when they don't want to pay?
Well, I'll answer that question for you. It's been a frustration of mine, but where we're coming to is because of mutual aid and assisted aid, sometimes it ends up that Con Fire is in their district providing services, and by giving them those resources, it doesn't take away from our ability. One of the things Chief Burchard and Chief McAllister can tell you, when you call 911 and you need a fire engine, you don't just get one fire engine from your house. You get 4 other fire engines from surrounding houses. And so when we get a call from East County Fire and we are part of that response, if you will, it takes away resources from Confire. And we've done studies on how many times do we go to them? How many times do they come to us? And in the end, it serves all of our purpose to be able to assist them so that they are not taking resources from Confire. Although if we go to more of a consolidation where they come into us, we have better ability to staff those resources. I know it appears that you may be paying for them, but if you could, the issue is more that it protects you as homeowners, as an insurance policy, if you will, that they are covered as much as you are covered.
Well, if we're sending units and staffing to East County, then we're depleting our resources, and they're not supporting us. They're depleting us.
Well, no, they do support us. I recognize your concern. It goes to what I mentioned earlier. A percent of their tax dollar is less because of Prop 13 than a percent of our tax dollar. So if we can assist them to be better positioned and better resourced, then it does help us. I know it's a sort of a convoluted way to think about it, but that is one reason they supported Measure X, was because they were tired. And you're right, I was very frustrated that they would never see that they needed to pay more. But from their perspective as homeowners, they were paying the same amount of taxes that you and I were paying, but a percentage of that was not going to fire because of the way Prop 13 was set up. So I've never been a big fan, I'll let you all know, of Prop 13. I've never been a fan of Prop 13 because of these unintended consequences. So hopefully with the passage, because we passed, the majority of residents in Contra Costa passed Measure X, that will help them. I need to move on, sir. Colleen and or Leah, who is our next person in line?
Yes, Mr. Art Jacobson, please take yourself off of mute. You'll have a few minutes to ask.
I'm off of mute. Chief Burchard and Chief McAllister. And also thank you, Supervisor Mitchoff. Just focusing on Station 4, do you have a engineering firm hired? Are they presently, have they looked at the station? Because what happens is typically, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to delay the opening of the station. And the other question is, although you mentioned 2022, the reason there's no money is because the money wasn't appropriated for the opening of the station. And it's to you, Karen Mitchoff, if you directed Chief Burchard to speed up that process, couldn't you talk to Chief Burchard and talk to Chief McAllister? Couldn't they put a temporary modular at that building in case there were delays and get?
Well, Art, I'm glad to hear from you. Let's be real clear and upfront. Art is a retired fire personnel. I am always going to look to our fire experts to tell me how to do things. And I was elected in 2010 and took office in 2011. And the first thing that came our way was the closing of many fire stations because of the recession. And it was not a fun time. And I was glad that we could reopen certain stations. But one of the reasons Fire Station 4 was not reopened was again because of strategic and tactical reasons. And I am not going to advocate that, Chief Burchard, I feel, has laid out a very good explanation as to the timing for reopening Station 4. One of the things, and we're happy to provide that information, are the response times. He mentioned ambulances. No one ever wants to see, as I said earlier, a fire engine at their house. And we want to get, if that need is there, a fire engine as quickly as possible, along with other resources. even though the response time has been delayed a bit, we do have standards that they need to respond to. And I am going to always look to our fire personnel. And I know there are other fire personnel on this call as to how that happens. And at this time, I am comfortable with the 18-month, although probably now in February, 17th month time frame for reopening Station 14. I don't
Awesome.
see it reopening sooner than
Station
that.
4. It's Station 4, and it is Contra Costa Fire District. Chief
Yes.
Bouchard, does Station 4 fit into the NFPA tactical fire response time? Does it fit into the response time that Supervisor Mitchoff mentioned? Does it fit into adequate response times that you can get up there? And the other question was, I know everybody's trying to be transparent, but the bomb squad is not, nobody's staffing that station at Station 4 right now. Walnut Creek
Correct.
just stores that store. Well, no, we were told that there's people in that station. Walnut Creek is just storing a piece of equipment there. So let's be as transparent as we can here. And I live outside of Station 4's area, but Karen, it does impact me because the reality is if Station 1's on a medical, if Station 4 is, if another unit, if Station 3 is in Rossmore, and simultaneously there's a fire in stations, everything just gets delayed. And it's just, I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just trying to make sure we get the equipment and get it staffed there, because in reality, Station 16 was always looked at getting open sooner, as soon as it was closed, because of political consequences.
No, I disagree with you, Art. It had nothing to do with politics. It had to do with me. I mean, I understand that's your perspective, but I will tell you as an elected official that any decision I made had to do with what was best for all communities and had nothing to do with politics. As you may recall, that Lafayette during the 2011 closures even argued, hey, we pay more taxes, we should get better service. And the board as an entirety said, no, that is not how it works.
I'm going to honor you with that response, and I'll leave it at that.
All right.
Who is our next questioner?
Next up, we have Mr. Gabriel Shore.
Mr. Shore, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for making time this evening. I just want to first off, I want to thank Teresa Adler for posting on Nextdoor about this. That's how I came to be aware of this meeting. And thank you for everybody's time in this meeting. It's been really informative. My family and I moved into this neighborhood. We're actually directly across the street. And I've just gotten some great information tonight, and I'm very excited. I didn't really know what to expect before the meeting. My father is recently moved to Rossmore as well. So there's benefits for not just my immediate sort of selfish needs, but my extended family and my neighbors who are my, even further extended family, as we need to take care of each other in this neighborhood. I just want to put the thought out there. It's not really a pressing question, but I'm really excited to have Station 4 reopened. I have a young family, and there's a lot of young families that have recently moved very close to this area. And I just want to put it out there while we're going through the reopening process that I'd like to have a little bit more community outreach for those next door or nearby or abutting, that we can be a part of it and welcome and let our kids be a part of it. And there's not a lot of great community space in this area. And there's certainly a lot of kind of, to the other gentleman's point about the bomb squad's not really using it today, it's really vacant. Perhaps there are some creative ways where it doesn't take much budget. Maybe we can fundraise in the neighborhood and do something for the little kids around here. Like there's, some land on the corner near the stop signs. Perhaps we could put something there for young children and really make it part of the community. Because I think, as we all know, my wife is a nurse for UCSF. I work for Kaiser Permanente myself. We've been responding to the pandemic. It really helps when your first responders are part of the community. And I have a lot of faith that that's going to happen. And, the more we can do to have outreach early and incorporate the local community's feedback, I think we can really make this reopening an enormous success, not only in the fire response and the safety and the medical, but in the community building and making this neighborhood, even better for the next generation who's raising families here. Thank you for everybody's time. I just wanted to ask that question.
Thank you, Mr. Shore, and I can assure you that our firefighters are just as committed as you are to that community involvement. And I found this out in 2011 when we had to close certain stations and then we're able to reopen them. And so I can assure you that when Station 4 is getting ready to reopen, you will have that community involvement. Next question, Miss Colleen or Leah.
Next, we have Robert Capra.
Thank you. Mr. Capra, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good, good. So I had just two observations or questions. I'm interested in the hand crew that the chief talked about. That was news to me. We used to utilize California state prisoners on hand crews at wildland fires. And you mentioned that this is actually a hand crew that is staffed and stationed in Martinez area. Who is it comprised of and how many people are involved? And the second question I had, I should have asked this first, was, is there any consideration of finding a new location, or has the decision been made to go with the present site at 700 Hawthorne and do what needs to be done to rehabilitate and make the station appropriate for habitation?
So,
Chard, I'll give that to you.
so I'm going to go in reverse order, if that's all right. So we have been looking into potential other sites for Station 4, as well as potential other sites for Station 1. And we have some software that aids us in guiding us. But as you can imagine, the software doesn't really know what the real estate market is, or the fact that there's a building already on that site. So at this point, the process of building a new station is incredibly expensive. Unfortunately, about a year ago, the San Francisco Bay Area became the most expensive construction market, I believe, on the planet. So it's almost cost prohibitive to build stations. And if you can avoid it, we try and avoid it. Station 4's present location, while in the future it might not be the best location, it is the location that we have. And with regards to time and money, we can refurbish it and put it to good use. 10 years from now, we may come up with a different solution. But for now, it will provide a benefit to the Station 4 area as we know it, as well as other adjacent areas. And we will see as we continue to move forward with long-term planning. And when I say long-term, I mean really long-term planning with regards to station locations, what that might mean into the future. We're currently moving Station 86 from Bay Point. It's about the same vintage. It's from the 1950s. Moving that down the street and to a new location, and we're looking to move Station 9 that was also built in the 1950s to a new location. So those 1950 facilities are certainly on our list to try and find a way to move them, not move them, but relocate. But as you can imagine, it's not easy because it's not like there's a bunch of vacant land that's looking for a new building to be built. With regards to the hand crew, this last summer, specifically last May, we started a pilot project with 12 seasonal workers that were supervised by two fire captains to see if this would work. One of the reasons that we wanted to do this was the fact that things have changed here. Climate change, fires have changed in Northern California. It's very apparent to see that. So as a large organization, we need to start to work on fuels mitigation projects, better weed abatement, exterior hazard control. And that is something that this crew can do when there's not an incident. And when there is an incident, this crew goes out to the incident and supports our firefighters, gets them back in service quicker, gets them rehabbed. The crew will go and change all the hose on the engine, and the engine's back in service. and then the crew will go up on the hill and bring the hose down off the hill. This year, in our current budget that we actually just completed last week, that crew will be expanded from 4 days a week to 7 days a week. It turned out to be an incredible success. And you mentioned the state hand crews. Something that occurred last year with COVID was that the state had a very limited number of hand crews available. With some changes in legislation and other issues with state prisons, there has been an incredible decrease in the number of state crews that are available. So because those crews are not available, local government agencies like ourselves that are of size that can support hand crews are starting to put their own hand crews in service, because quite frankly, those state resources just simply aren't there anymore. And those state resources were, and they continue to be, incredibly valuable, but since they're not there, we have to sort of venture out onto our own. So it turned out to be a very successful program last year, and we're looking forward to expanding it this summer and seeing what the future brings for that group.
Thank you.
Next caller, question?
Next, we have Lori Varlas, and I'm sorry if I mispronounced your last name, but Lori.
Great, thank you. And thank you, Supervisor Mitchoff, for holding this call so we could have a dialogue on this topic.
Very well.
Setting aside taxes and all that, I don't want to talk about risk. There are many of us here who are with, for instance, with AAA, and I've been with them for like 35 years, 20 years.
Are you
in this
talking
particular
about
house.
3A insurance or
Insurance, home insurance.
Because there's a AAA aging and adult services. I just want to make sure.
Yeah,
we're talking about
yes, thank you. Yes, AAA home insurance. And although I've been with them for 35 years and 20 years in this particular house in this neighborhood, they come in recently in the last year and canceled policies for many of us. I'm not alone, that based on fire risk. And what they do is they look at the proximity of firehouses, they look at the open space, they look at the demographics, and they came in and said the risk is too high.
Right.
And so my question is, it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that there were a number of firehouses that were closed. There are 2 left to reopen, but even those that opened, some of them have more staff than they started with, more chiefs, more resources. So they got abundance of riches and we got nothing. Is there an alternative plan? I'm relieved to hear that in 18, 17 months, they're gonna open it up, but is there an alternative B in between now and then where maybe we pull some of those resources on a temporary basis for a shift or 2, something to be able to keep us safer in this community?
And I'm going to look to the chief on this, and we may have to get back to you afterwards, Ms. Varlas. I know that there have been communities impacted. What I understand is the ISO, which is some sort of standard. I'm surprised to hear that you have had a negative impact. And Chief Bouchard, I'll leave it to you and your staff to get back to her unless you have an answer right now. But you are the first constituent I have heard of from who has had this negative impact. Not to negate that you have had it, but I want to make sure that we provide your insurance company with the most up-to-date and accurate information. And my understanding is that we meet the requirements. Chief Bouchard, did you want to respond to this or take this back to your staff to get back to her?
And if you go on Nextdoor, you'll see a number of people have complained about AAA canceling their homeownership policy. So you'll see a number of those out there, not just myself. My son who lives over by Muirwood, his premiums doubled. Again, all about risk.
Well, and a lot of those insurance companies, believe me, before I became an elected official, I worked in law and insurance defense. And I've never been a big fan of insurance companies because it's always about the bottom line. And I very much appreciate what I'm hearing from you. Chief Bouchard, do you have any response to this?
So when I started to see some of the correspondence with Supervisor Mitchoff, that was the first that I have been informed that anybody in Station 4's area was impacted by underwriting decisions.
Right.
What I can share with you is that about 2 months ago, I spent almost an hour on the phone with an insurance agent in Walnut Creek. His client lived over near Saranac, So obviously no issues with fire risk from my perspective. And that homeowner who has lived there for 23 years, their insurance policy was canceled based on an arbitrary underwriting decision from that carrier. And I don't know who it was, I can't remember, that they were getting canceled because of risk. We are seeing this phenomenon in areas that we don't consider to be of risk, but the insurance carriers are declaring through their own arbitrary underwriting procedures that they are of risk. So there's not much we can do to control that. The ISO, Insurance Services Office, so long as you have a staffed fire station, I want to say it's within 5 miles, then you're considered to be covered. And so I don't think that it's a fire station issue necessarily. We are literally hearing stories of people that are getting canceled based on these, again, arbitrary underwriting decisions that are being made by insurance carriers based on their own risk profiles in order to reduce their overall risk and their overall footprint in a state that is having increased wildfires, maybe not necessarily in our area that are, you know, very destructive, but obviously throughout the state and particularly Northern California. So it's a phenomenon that exists out there. I believe that there are some attempts through some legislation to try and help remedy this, but it's something that I am starting to hear more about.
Which is unfortunate because we all want business to do what they do. But Ms. Varlas, so you've been canceled or told you're going to be canceled. Have you had a difficult time finding another insurance carrier?
Yeah, I found another insurance carrier, but just the fact that they're looking at our demographics and declaring risk. I'm really interested in the second part of my question. Is there something that we can do in the interim of those 18 months to cover us even on a, you know, an ad hoc or temporary basis, given that some firehouses have more than they had before and we have not
But
received
you
that.
are within 5 miles. So as Chief Bouchard said, you shouldn't be having this problem. It's a business decision of your insurance carrier. And unfortunately, I have no control over that.
Yeah.
Louis, if you can provide me with information on the legislation that may be proposed. I sit on the county legislation committee.
Yeah.
And I'm happy to put you in touch with those state legislators. I'm hoping that some of them are our local legislators for you to work on that. But unfortunately, I think the answer to your question is there's nothing we can do in the interim.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm sorry. I don't like giving that kind of information, but there's only so many things we have control over. Colleen,
Mr. Joe Flanagan.
Mr. Flanagan? Are you there, Mr. Flanagan? There, I see you. You need to unmute. You're still muted. There you
All right,
go.
here we go.
Thank you.
First off, I want to thank Teresa Adler for bringing us all together and supervisor and the chief. We really do appreciate your willingness and open comments on exactly where we stand with the opening of Station 4. I too have a similar story as Lori Varlas just mentioned. We've been insured with AAA for over 20 years. And in August, we got the notification that they were canceling our homeowners insurance. Needless to say, I was very upset, especially when they said we were a high fire risk, and because we lived close to the proximity of Shell Ridge and the open space. And the other point they commented in the letter was the road accessibility for firefighting and emergency response. And I inferred from that comment that the fact that we are somewhat distanced from Station 1 or Station 32 in Danville That was obviously a factor in them deciding to cancel our homeowners insurance. Now, I did have to shop around, and fortunately was able to find alternate insurance. And but what I'd like to suggest is that Supervisor, we get the word out, you guys get the word out, because there's going to, I guarantee you, if for other people on this call, you too will be getting the same notice as we have, and I know several other neighbors have, 2 months in advance of your policy being renewed. And so my point is this: if you could get in touch with the major insurance companies, let them know that you are planning to reopen, Station 4, and and again, it sounds like you guys were not aware that all these cancellations are occurring, and it's not just the AAA. And when we went out shopping around for other insurance, we were told, no, we're not taking any any new homes in your area. Some of the insurance companies were grandfathering, their current policy holders. I was just surprised that AAA wasn't doing the same. So.
No, and I share your frustration, Mr. Flanagan. As I mentioned, I'm not a big fan of insurance companies. You'd think with all the premiums they receive that they might look at a number of other factors, and they don't seem to be doing so. But my staff has taken down your request, and we will see what we can do, and we will follow up with our state legislators to see what we can do. Unfortunately, California, I mean, in the area where you live, and I talked to Chief Burchard about this earlier today before our meeting, it's the other side of Mount Diablo that has a higher risk, if you will, than where you live. And it's just very frustrating as an elected official that companies don't take into account other situations. But thank you for your comment, and I appreciate Ms. Varlas's comment. And I will personally be talking to Assemblymember Grayson and our state senator Glazer to see what we can do about this.
And I would just reiterate the comment about the roadways, that the insurance companies are finding any reason they possibly can to describe something that has risk. I'll give you just a little bit of information. There was I can't remember what company this was. They had a risk scale of 0 to 100. And this particular house scored a 6. And because it scored a 6, it was canceled. I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, a scale of 0 to 100 and you score a 6, that sounds pretty good. But I guess if you score over a 1, they have a reason to say, oh, there's risk. And they're doing everything they can to shed risk in California.
Colleen, next caller or question?
Next up is Teresa Adler.
Ms. Adler?
Hi, thank you. I'm extremely excited that Station 4 is going to be reopened. We also lost our house insurance twice, actually. But my question is, you noted that the station was due to open in 2022. What I'd like to know is when we might expect to see construction work started on Station 4. That's my question.
So most of it's relatively minor interior remodel type work. So I don't know that you're going to see large scale type construction. We do have to get in there, and I appreciate the comment from earlier. I've been involved in many of our construction projects. We do expect to find surprises. We know there's probably some asbestos in that station. It's kind of like peeling an onion. It's a really old building. We might keep finding things in there that surprise us. So we do expect a certain amount of that. But first step, we've got to get the bomb squad out of there and then really start construction in earnest and get in there and work on it. So I don't have a specific date for you, but we do have a plan. I do have the roofing report. We do intend to start the roofing work as soon as we get through the rainy season in the spring. get going from there.
And I can assure you, Ms. Adler, one of the frustrations with reopening Station 16, Chief McAllister is being very quiet on this. We run into so many roadblocks, if you will, with other entities that we have no control over, such as PG&E. But I can assure you that fire staff wants to get this reopened. It assists in a whole bunch of different ways. And I know that there are fire personnel, as I said earlier, on this call, and they are working from a labor management perspective. So, you know, with this public meeting, we've committed to this July 2022. I know from my experience that sometimes it takes a little longer. There shouldn't be some of those PG&E considerations, but there's always something that comes up. But this fire command has been phenomenal in moving forward, because their chief concern is protection. That's why they went into the fire service. So I will continue to be in contact with them, and we will continue through this e-blast that we have set up to make sure you're kept informed along the way. Colleen, I see Mr. Tracy and Mr. Rusuli. Who's next?
We have about 4 people still on our list. So actually next up is Rich's iPad.
Okay, Richard's iPad, go for it. There you
Hi,
are.
Rich
The Golden
Facina.
Gate Bridge in the background.
That's it. I'm a big fisherman, if you can't tell.
Good for you.
I live in the Joaquin Ranch area, and likewise with the insurance problems that mentioned before by other neighbors in the area. A couple of points and clarifications I'd like. Number one, do all of the local fire stations have the keys to the gates to the open spaces? Because we have had instances in the past where luckily our neighbors have the extra keys because PG&E had changed the locks and no one had the key.
Isn't PG&E a fabulous
Oh,
community?
yeah. So I don't know if there's a procedure from the fire side of that each station has keys to. We have a main gate at the end of our street here on Rock Spring. So that's the thing I just wanted to bring up, number one. Number two, talking about the assessments. Chief, you mentioned that you can't get the information concerning the area specifics of assessments and taxes. But then conversely, we hear that it doesn't matter what the assessments are. Is it possible to get a map that shows the delineation of the area of Station 4? And if that's the case, I will do my best to gather the forces and we'll get that information for you. It is readily available.
I'm happy to answer that for you, Rich. You need to do the homework with the assessor's office.
Yes,
We don't have that information, but I want to say again, it really doesn't matter.
Well, that's my point, to put the time and the efforts in it, but if it doesn't matter, because it is available. You can go on the assessor and find any properties.
But
current
you'd have to look at each assessed
I understand.
property. That's a huge task. I cannot ask county staff to do that.
I'm
It's-
not asking county staff.
No, I
will-
understand, but if you
Okay.
want to do it, you're very welcome to do it. But again, it doesn't matter. It
Okay.
really doesn't.
Okay. Next is on,
Rich, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead, sir.
I was going to say, finding out the assessed valuation is only half the puzzle. The other puzzle is
Right.
what the actual flow to the district is from that. And that's a very, very convoluted process. So with regards to the fire trail gates, we, through our heavy equipment program, we do get into the trails every year and improve them if necessary. They should be checking when they're there, obviously, to find out if our trail lock is still there. And if not, they'll do their best to cut it in. And then all of our engines carry what we call the master key, the big bolt cutters. So if we have to, we'll find our way in.
Now, concerning the open space, I have to be lucky, very lucky how my house is positioned. I back up to open space and across the street is open space. So I really impacted by that aspect of it. And do you and the fire group work with the city concerning how far the open space weeds are abated, coupled with there has been a very inconsistent application. We used to have cows 12 months a year when I moved here 37 years ago. And now we get cow grazing maybe only a couple of weeks or a month to help keep the grass down. And we do it ourselves to protect ourselves, not only from, of course, our fence line, but behind our fence lines. And I find each year it is a big inconsistency of how far from our fence lines they cut that tall grass, especially if there's no grazing cows or even better goats.
So short answer is yes, we do have standards. And if they, whoever the property owner is, and it doesn't matter if it's a city or a private entity or another government entity, they own the property, whoever they are, and they're required to keep that property up to our standards. So we can work with you if you identify where some of the issues are for us. We have a group that's all they do during the summer is to go out and identify those issues and work with the owner to resolve them, or we have folks that we will put on to do it ourselves and lien the property if necessary.
Okay, and contact your office.
Yes.
Thank you. Colleen, our next
Sure.
question.
I actually had Mr. Sean Tracy up next, but I don't see him on the list now.
I saw him earlier with his name. Well, let's,
He logged off. He logged
Okay.
off already.
all right,
All
who's
right.
our next person? Because I'd really like to conclude this by 8:30 unless,
We just have two more. So next is
okay,
Lino Campanelle. Go ahead.
Mr. Campanelle or Ms. Campanelle.
Yeah, that's Mr. Thank you.
Hello, there you are.
Good to talk to you again. Anyways, hey, we actually have lived next to the fire station for 22 years, and fire station and now bomb squad storage facility, and it's been a great asset to the community. There's a lot of tradition steeped in that. The fire chief that we had on here earlier, it was great having him as a neighbor. The one thing I didn't know is that there was supposed to be a presence there. And, quite frankly, July of 2022, I can't wait for that to happen because the lack of presence there has actually turned this this station into blight. And, we literally back right up against it and the landscaping is terrible. And it actually intrudes on our property and we constantly have to ask for it. There's vagrancy that happens over there. We've had to call the police a couple times. With homeless people walking over. So I want that taken care of. I'm asking you, please, somebody take care of that between now and July of 2022, because that is a concern of me and my family. We have 5 children. They range from 5 to 18, but nonetheless, when there's nefarious activity going on next to our home, that's something I definitely want addressed. And then
I want to interrupt you. So you're telling me that there are vagrants in the area and, okay.
On the property.
Yeah.
Within
On
the
the
last 2
property.
months,
Yes,
we've called twice.
They come into
on
the
the
property. I'm sure a full-blown assessment's been done of the property, but the exterior is in bad shape.
No, we understand, but I'm trying to address the issue of what you're saying.
People are able to break into the gates and get into the back, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
People get onto the roof of the carport and play on it.
Okay, so I can assure you that Chief Burchard and his staff will work with Walnut Creek Police to deal with that. You
Well,
may
it's the
not
county
see,
sheriff, that's the problem. But
because you're in an unincorporated area.
exactly.
Okay, and I'm
Yep.
sure Chief Burchard is making a note of that. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate the feedback. That's not the neighbor we want to be, even if we're not physically in the building. So I appreciate that. We'll get our facilities folks to get out there and address some of those things.
Yeah, and we can't wait to have you back, quite honestly. And also, hopefully in your budget, you've thought about the exterior facade and what's gonna, how it's gonna blend in with the community, because it's really, frankly, kind of run down. And, for example, the carport, the fencing, the fences are falling down. The landscaping is, quite horrendous. I'm just hoping that maybe you can work with us, to make sure that it blends in with the community and reflects the time and effort that the neighbors put into their yards. to ensure that it mixes in well. Kind of on to, Gabriel's comment, who lives right across the street. Let's just, make sure that we have a community effort here and it's something that we can all embrace. And then my third comment, I'm in the construction industry and, the development side specifically. And COVID, we've had, 3 different construction projects, major projects ranging from hotels all the way down to senior assisted living facilities. And the permitting process and PG&E, Supervisor Mitchoff, that you mentioned, PG&E, hopefully you're not turning the power off because the delays that you can experience there are very horrendous. But also I've noticed in dealing with, if you're going to be pulling a permit, dealing with permit staff and their inaccessibility and the black hole that things tend to go into. You used to be able to go to the permit counter and kind of camp out and say, hey, I really need you to review my plans. I need these approved. And you can't do that anymore. So
well, I'm interested in that, sir, because I'm being told that you can go to the permit counter. So perhaps offline, you can contact Colleen and give me specifics, because I work very closely with our Department of Conservation and Development. And
yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, and our issue has been with other counties and municipalities. I'm just hoping that Contra Costa is better.
Well, my understanding is we are.
Okay.
I'm going to toot our horn. I'm going to toot our horn, but that we have been better.
But yeah, let's just make sure that we're thinking about the COVID impacts and the delays with the schedule, and getting on top of approvals and permits and
You let me know if you have a problem with Contra Costa County. Okay.
I will if you're not done.
What do you mean if I'm not done?
No, if you don't get it done. I mean, if people aren't there in July.
You let me know and we will make, I have no problem picking up the phone and calling the people in charge.
Great.
And then the last person I have is, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name, Kamran. It looks like it's cut off in the chat. Rasuli?
Rasuli, Mr. Rasuli, I see you there. Go ahead. You need to unmute yourself. There you go.
Yeah. Yes. Hi. Thank you very much. It was very informative, and we've been missing the Station 4 for many years. I've been living here since 1994 in the next street, next block, very close to Station 4. And so I was going to mention that the couple of fire incidents that I have been with while the Station 4 was here was mostly these transformers that get blown up. And because, even by looking outside my house, a lot of the tree that the transformer is standing on, the post the transformer is standing on, they're all mostly dead. And then the transformers are old and the oil gets hot and it blows up. So in this area, from what I remember, it's open spaces is less of a risk as far as the risk assessment. It's been mostly the transformers, and thanks to Station 4 that was close by, they showed up, and a couple of small fires that we had, they took care of it, and we've been fortunate in that sense. And now, is there? Two questions. One is the old PG&E that I heard mention, a couple of names in the conversation, their infrastructure, is that being considered in the risk assessment? And if yes or no, is there any plans as to reducing the risk of fire because of these old transformers in this region?
I'll look to Chief Burchard. I'm sure he's in contact with PG&E over this.
Yeah, you're touching on an issue that's almost a statewide issue, in so much that PG&E covers a lot of the state. So PG&E has significant infrastructure issues. Some of those infrastructure issues have been directly correlated to deadly fires. The Camp Fire was directly correlated to significantly old infrastructure, very simple things that led to disaster. So PG&E has a plan. I'm not going to comment on whether I agree or disagree with it or whether it's enough or not, but they do recognize that they have infrastructure issues, and it's going to take a significant amount of time and money and resources for them to get their infrastructure to where it should be. And it could be the transformer that's around the corner from your house, or the lines that are running through a particular forest. So it's a very daunting endeavor, but ultimately they're responsible for it and they have to start addressing it, even though it's going to probably take years to resolve.
Right, and so that's why I'm very excited to see that Station 4 is coming back. So at least that we don't have to sit there every night in the summer and watch the transformers. But in fact, in one of the fires, I have to get my garden hose out there to go put the fire out myself. So that's very exciting news. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you, sir, but if you or anybody else see tree limbs or trees impacting lines, even this time of year, there's a process where we can report that, or you can as well, to PG&E. There are requirements for them to maintain distances around their lines. And every once in a while, we see that that's not being done. So we can put pressure on them to get that done. We just need to know where those are.
Okay, thank you.
And I can assure you, sir, our fire department is working on that. But the government affairs person for PG&E is a member of a local community business organization. And so if you let the chief know and you CC my office, I'm happy to follow up on that. Colleen, do we have any other questions or comments?
There's no other hands raised. I don't have any other follow-up questions in the chat.
I'm going to let Mr. Eganier, and I'm sorry if he's already asked a question, but one more question, and then I'm going to have a closing comment. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. Quick question. You talked about staffing and waiting until July of 2022. Right now we have 17, not surplus, but additional firefighters waiting on assignment. We're going to have 2 more academies. Why do we have to wait, other than that finance issue?
So the numbers of staff are a bit deceiving. They look good on paper, but when you account for people that are off on workers' comp and the retirements that are starting to trickle in, we are going to likely have a deficit of 8 positions come July 1 of this year. So that overage that you see, Mike, is going to probably rapidly dissipate over the next couple of months.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Everyone, thank you so much for participating in this. I'm going to continue with our e-blast. And if there are additional neighbors who were not able to attend tonight and we don't have their emails, please let us know. I can assure you, as I said earlier, that our fire department, Chief Louis Bouchard and Assistant Chief Mara McAllister, I have the utmost confidence in them. I've been fortunate with the fire response. We've reopened a few stations, but I do look at this as a regional issue. And I want to make sure that I'm responsive to your concerns, but I also have to have that broader picture. So please continue to send us any concerns or questions you have. We will get back to you as quickly as we can. And I'm committed to answering any questions you have. Chief Bouchard and Assistant Chief McAllister, thank you so much for participating in this. I want to thank my staff, and I want to thank all of you for participating. And with that, we will wish you a good evening. And again, if you are not, you're on my e-blast for this issue, but I have a broader e-blast to everyone relative to any issue that's going on in the county, especially as it relates to vaccines right now. So please let Colleen know. If you are not on that list, we'll be happy to add you to that. And with that, I'll wish you good night. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, thank you.
Everybody.